Greetings, true believers, and welcome to another daring episode of History of the Marvel Universe. Previously, we recounted the tale of Hector Ayala, a Puerto Rican man who obtained the mystical amulets formerly worn by the Sons of the Tiger to become a vigilante called the White Tiger. Hector eventually retired from the life of a hero, but years later in Daredevil number 38 in 2002, the White Tiger returned. Two men were robbing a pawn shop. A police officer arrived on the scene and called for backup, but one of the men knocked the cop down and took his gun, shooting him point blank in the head. Hector, apparently back in New York and back as the White Tiger, attempted to intercept the robbers, but they ran off, and before Hector could pursue them, more officers arrived and arrested him. At the insistence of Luke Cage and Iron Fist, Matt Murdock agreed to defend Hector in court, despite being caught up in a scandal of his own, in which tabloid newspapers were claiming that Murdock was in fact secretly the vigilante Daredevil. During the trial, we learned more about the Jade Tiger amulet from Doctor Strange's testimony. Originally carved in Kunlun, the amulets are broken pieces from a Jade Tiger statue. When worn by the Sons of the Tiger, the amulets provided each wearer with the strength of all three, while a single user would have his natural abilities heightened. Despite the fact that there was no gunpowder residue on Hector's white gloves, it seemed everybody had decided that he was guilty, and the DA used circumstantial evidence to build up a case, and in the end, the jury voted to convict. Hector panicked and tried to escape, and when a police officer dropped his gun, Hector picked it up and ran. However, his exit was blocked by the media outside, and in the end, Hector Ayala was shot to death on the steps of the courthouse where he was found guilty of a crime he didn't commit. The story didn't end there, however. The Tiger amulets later came into the possession of Angela Del Toro, an FBI agent tasked with gathering proof that Matt Murdock was Daredevil. Del Toro confronted Murdock outside his home, questioning why he does what he does as Daredevil. Murdock, of course, could not admit anything, but Del Toro revealed that she was the daughter of Awilda Ayala Del Toro, Hector's older sister. Murdock instructed her to meet him atop the rooftops later that evening, and Angela used the Tiger amulet to do so. Daredevil emerged from the shadows and challenged Angela, explaining the history of the amulets as she became accustomed to their power. Things later took a turn for Angela when Wilson Fisk, the kingpin of crime, offered to make a deal with the FBI. Proof that Matt Murdock was Daredevil in exchange for his own freedom. Angela protested the director's decision to take the deal, and in exchange was fired. Despite Angela wanting to help him, Matt Murdock was eventually arrested and taken to Rikers Island. Fortunately, even though the Kingpin was pardoned of his past associations due to the deal, the FBI was able to pin him with a murder charge and take him in as well. Angela Del Toro next appeared in the 2007 White Tiger miniseries, where she fully embraced the mantle of the White Tiger. The series began with Angela staying in the apartment she inherited from her partner in the FBI, Agent Driver, who was killed by a Yakuza member named Sano Ori. She struck out into the night wearing a black costume and her tiger pendants, and we learned that somebody obtained the tiger amulets from police property and sent them to Angela. If we ever found out who that was, it isn't in this miniseries. My money is still on Blackbird. I felt this was a missed opportunity to reintroduce him into the story. Angela came across two fighting gangs and intercepted, finding one of them was carrying blank passports and green cards. As the police arrived to arrest the gang members, Angela spotted what appeared to be Daredevil on the rooftop. This set off a red flag in her head as Matt Murdock was still in jail at the time, and she ran up to confront him. The fake Daredevil asked if Angela had ever heard of an organization called Chai-Yi. This was a very good question considering this was the first time they'd ever been mentioned, but apparently they were the ones behind the illegal transfer of American ID papers. Angela brought this information to her contact in the FBI, Agent Coville, who identified the driver that passed the papers to the gang as Piet Voorhees. Piet was the nephew of Klaus Voorhees, the original King Cobra, and obtained similar powers from his uncle, allowing him to twist and contort his body and spit deadly acid. Seemingly the only reason to introduce a new Cobra in this series rather than just include the classic one was so that they could also give him an enhanced sense of smell. This addition is entirely pointless though, as it is always somehow rendered useless over the course of the series. Angela confirms that Piet was the driver, which would have been nice to see in the art rather than just have this information exposited at us. And of course, Sano Ori, the Yakuza member who killed Angela's partner, was also working with Cobra and Chayi. On her way home, Angela casually drops information to the reader which is new and important to the story. The book blows past these important reveals in a single caption box, so let's take a minute to analyze the information given in this one panel. First off, Angela wonders why she went to Daredevil to ask about the amulets. She reveals that she already knew Power Man and Iron Fist because they were friends with Hector. Okay, sure, Iron Fist met Hector a couple of times back in the 70s, but even when they teamed up, they rarely spent any time in the same room, let alone got close enough for Angela to call Danny uncle as she does here. As for Power Man, the only time he and Hector were even in the same book was when Luke asked Murdoch to represent Hector at his trial. Luke and Hector never directly interacted then. Although this detail would add some nice context as to why Luke was so insistent on Matt representing Hector. Even if you accept at face value that Hector became friends with both Iron Fist and Luke Cage either before he left New York or after he returned, it still leaves the question that Angela herself asks. Why did she go to Daredevil for help instead of Iron Fist? Not only is he her Uncle Danny, a superhero and one of the world's greatest martial artists, but he trained in Kunlun, where the tiger amulets were made. Was it just because Angela was investigating Daredevil at the time? Was it because his secret identity was outed, just like her Uncle Hector? Any explanation would do, but the book doesn't give us one. Some books play fast and loose with continuity to tell a compelling story. This book actively creates plot holes in other, better stories. Anyway, Angela gets inside her apartment and finds a note written by Daredevil and delivered by Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, who Angela met briefly before, telling her where to go to get a costume. Natasha met Angela on the way, giving her a tiny domino mask to protect her secret identity, and the two enter Potter's costume shop, run by the family of Melvin Potter, formerly the Gladiator, and Angela changes into what is actually a pretty good white tiger costume. Unlike Hector's, it actually has stripes! Oh, and Spider-Man is there for some reason. After having a drink with Natasha, Angela traveled to a garage where Eddie, one of the punks she fought before, was known to hang out. Here, the new white tiger found the Cobra, and the two fought. However, Sano Ori arrived, and the white tiger pursued him instead. She hopped atop the car, but Sano shot her in the shoulder and escaped. Angela survived, however, and interrogated Sano's lackey, Eddie, before the fake Daredevil helped her get back to her home to fully recover. She later got a new job at a security firm where her first assignment was to bodyguard two rich college girls. She and two other guards accompanied the girls to a nightclub where one of them was hit on by Sano Ori. Angela intercepted, dancing with Sano in her place, and what should have been a very tense scene just ends up being extremely awkward as the two sort of half fight and half breakdance, but everybody watching seems to think they're just dancing. I would have said they were clearly fighting if the action in these panels was actually depicted clearly. Looking at this panel, I'm pretty sure she's either tripping or kicking him, considering the way he lands in the next panel, but the perspective is totally wonky. And then the sequence is just over. We turn the page and Angela is surrounded by the two girls and the two other guards again. It's so abrupt I had to make sure I wasn't missing a page. Then one of the guards looks up and sees the Cobra in the rafters and they all just leave. Oh, and we're reminded that the Cobra has super smell, but it doesn't matter because there's too much perfume in the air. Angela goes back to her apartment to change into the White Tiger and guesses where Sano will be next. She meets up with the fake Daredevil, somehow. Oh, and Spider-Man is there. And then he just leaves. The fake Daredevil lets it slip that he's known Angela since she was 14, causing her to suspect his true identity. Sano comes out of the club and the White Tiger and Daredevil attack him and his gang before more Yakuza arrive, disguised as police. Fortunately, Spider-Man must not have gone very far as he pulls them away from the fight. And then they all just go home. After we meet more of Angela's co-workers, who we don't really care about, Angela gets into her routine of gathering information on Sano's operations while keeping her neighborhood safe. This leads to another encounter with the Cobra, which ends kind of abruptly when he's called away. The following morning, Angela gets a call from her mother, Awilda, who isn't dead. Even though the last time we saw her, she died in Hector's arms. I guess somebody didn't read this panel carefully enough. And Angela even goes to a family reunion, and yeah, there's Awilda, and she's not dead. Okay, I'm fine with the idea that Awilda survived her injuries. I mean, it was pretty crappy that Hector's entire family was killed in the first place, but there's no explanation here. It isn't even treated like a reveal because there's no acknowledgement that we thought Awilda was dead. The closest thing we get is a caption box stating that Awilda is the sole surviving member of Hector's family. I'm okay with retcons when they help the story, but this book just flatly gives information that contradicts what we already know with no explanation and expects us to accept it. Oh, and Iron Fist is there too. We're reminded that Danny Rand and Luke Cage were apparently such good friends with Hector that Angela calls them Tio, or Uncle, even though that relationship was never established before this series. And here we get the added wrinkle that they also babysat Angela when she was a kid. This does not really fit with the timeline. Angela was an FBI agent, which means that she's at least in her mid-20s. The minimum age requirement for the FBI is 23. Furthermore, the series has already told us that the last time Angela had a babysitter was when she was 14. This means that Danny Rand babysat Angela at least 9 years ago in-universe. However, the general rule of thumb at the time was that the modern Marvel Universe, starting with Fantastic Four #1, was only about 10 years old in-universe, give or take. Which means that 9 years ago, Danny Rand would have probably still been in Kunlun. This could only have happened after Danny returned to the States, which means that he must have become such close friends with Hector that he babysat his 14-year-old niece in less than a year. And none of that makes any sort of sense with what we've already seen in those old White Tiger stories, especially considering how Hector left New York after Awilda supposedly died. But this book doesn't bother to elucidate on any of this. In the next issue, White Tiger fights the lizard for 2 pages, and then it's over. She goes to the airport where Sano Ori's father, the leader of his Yakuza clan, arrives in the States, but then 2 superpowered immigrants are attacked by a group of domestic terrorists. The White Tiger jumps to their rescue and the scene just ends without resolution. It seriously feels like there is a page missing here. As soon as something interesting starts happening, we just skip forward a couple hours past all the action so we can see Angela check in at her job. After a chat with Luke Cage, some information from her informant, and a completely pointless cameo from Emma Frost, Angela discovers the man getting the government papers to the Yakuza, Jessup Pine, and shadows him until he meets with Sano again. The Cobra smells the White Tiger, although based on this panel he could have just seen her, so the enhanced sense of smell is still pointless. Cobra and Tiger fight while Sano shoots Pine after calling him a baka like he's a white guy trying to sound Japanese. The battle ends when Cobra bites the tiger and the police arrive. Angela slinks away and presses the amulet against her wound to try and heal it. When she awakens, Angela finds she has developed camouflage powers. Even though in Daredevil number 39, Dr. Strange clearly stated that the Tiger amulets only enhance the user's abilities and do not provide additional powers. Oh, and the fake Daredevil is actually Iron Fist. There is literally no reason for Iron Fist to have done this. He later tells Luke Cage that he wanted to continue Matt Murdock's mentoring. There are 3 reasons this plot point does not work. First, Murdoch didn't mentor Angela that much. He fought her a little, gave her some advice, and then kicked her off a roof. Secondly, Murdoch was in jail, and Angela knew it. There was no way she would mistake Danny for the real Daredevil, and she had no reason to trust an imposter. And third, this series already established that Angela trained at Iron Fist's dojo. He didn't need to continue Daredevil's mentoring. He had already mentored her himself. The only reason we have an imposter Daredevil in the first place is to create the mystery. But the reveal isn't even really a reveal. Angela just figures it out. Hell, he could have just been Iron Fist the whole time and it would have barely changed the story. If anything, it would have been a better way to establish the relationship between the 2 characters. Anyway, Angela finds Sano and Cobra again by finding Eddie and riding on the roof of his car. Like most things in the book, this just happens without any setup or explanation. On one page, Angela is angry at Danny, turn the page and bam, she's on the roof of the car in her white tiger outfit. Oh, and I'm pretty sure these guys should be able to see her considering it's established in this issue that Angela's camouflage power isn't invisibility. Maybe it's just too dark, but then shouldn't the Cobra be able to smell her? Oh no, but someone's smoking a cigar, so it masks her scent. Meaning, once again, we're reminded that the Cobra has an enhanced sense of smell, but once again, it's completely useless and does not actually affect the story at all. Anyway, Angela decides to continue tailing Eddie so she can find his storehouse, but then Deadpool shows up for no reason. Well, I shouldn't say no reason. He shows up and stops Angela because the plot demands that Angela not reach the storehouse right now. I mean, because he mistakes her for the Black Cat. This is incredibly lazy writing. Anyway, after a fairly interesting encounter with Sano's father, a short encounter with Sano, and a completely random encounter with the lizard, Angela finally does what she should have been doing this whole time and teams up with Iron Fist, Luke Cage, and Black Widow. Oh, and Spider-Man is there too. They track the villains to their warehouse to take them on, and we finally get a good scene of superhero team-up action. This all ends when Sano accidentally kills his father and commits seppuku. No, seriously, that's how the fight ends. The Japanese villain loses honor and disembowels himself. The day is won, the cops arrive, and the surviving gang members are all arrested, with the White Tiger having gathered enough evidence for the police. But elsewhere, Chai-Yi's operative has called in someone new to take out the White Tiger. Omega Red! As far as I can tell, this plot point has never been followed up on and probably never will be. So that's how a potentially interesting character starred in an underwhelming 6-issue miniseries. If you like this video, however, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more. And click that bell icon to be notified when videos go live. As always, the issues referenced here are listed in the description below, in case you want to read them for yourself. Frankly though, just read the Daredevil issues, they're really good. So, until next time, true believers, Excelsior!